Okay then. Good morning. Yeah, I can see part of everyone. I can see all of Rosemary and Goli and all of Billy. So let's go around, and I want to see the name. I want to hear your names, okay?
I'm Alex.
Alex? Good. Molly? Molly? Gail?
Whitney.
Libby? Whitney? Stephen?
Claire.
One more.
Claire.
Spell it.
Claire.
Claire. Oh, it's Claire. Hi, Claire. Nice to wave to you last night. Yeah. Patty. Shirley. Grace. Rosemary. Thank you for being here. My first time with teaching in person since March of 2019. So for me, it's just a breath of fresh air. And you'll have breath of fresh air through masks when we're together. And I want to thank you for this. Thank you for coming. I would thank you for coming under any circumstances, because it's not easy. I mean, it's a bit of a thing to get ready to come to a retreat. And under the present circumstances, for you to come when a lot of people are loosening up and not wearing masks anymore, and you're probably wearing masks less than usual, and for you to come and agree to put on your masks again, I'm deeply touched. And I want to say, just in a personal sense, we're going to start with opening prayers and stuff, but I want to just be here with you for a few minutes before we do that. I want to do what we don't always do in this pandemic world that we live in. I want to explain a little bit of it. I mean, we take, in general, at the Garchen Institute, we have very clear COVID precautions, and we haven't had a slip. And a lot of other places have tried to open, and then they had to close again, and so on, and a little bit of a spread. And that hasn't happened here because of the care that's taken by the staff at the Institute. But I also want to say something personal, which is, I'm the person they're talking about the old lady who has a severe and underlying condition. And, just to be, I have an incurable lung disease. I'm doing great, as you can tell, I'm marching around and I can breathe and I can talk and so on. But with COVID, it could be different. Right? So for me personally, I could not be here with you were you not willing to be here in this way. And so it's a great gift that you're giving me by your presence, your masked presence. And I was thinking about this moment of seeing you all with your masks on, and at some point we'll be outside and everybody can take their masks off, but that moment isn't this. And I found myself saying, behind our masks, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones that we've been practicing with in our minds, many of us, whether we know each other in this lifetime or not. This may be our first time of meeting, apparently, but over and over again, those of us who've taken commitments together and done practice together in other rounds gather again. So my mother, who had Alzheimer's, as she was declining with that, as you know, very demolishing disease, I went to see her at the place where she was staying, and there was a swing set out back. Some of you have probably heard this story, maybe Claire, many years ago. No? There was a swing set out back, and I was just swinging on the swing set. This was back in the early 80s, I guess. I can't remember exactly when, or maybe it was in the 70s. And my mother came walking out through the open French doors of the place where she was staying, and she walked toward me with her hand extended, the way you do with somebody you haven't met before. I'm going to shake your hand. Our family was not, I have a French name, but we were not in the habit of the Gallic French handshake, So I thought I could feel that there was a difference from the last time I'd seen her. And then she got closer and we shook hands. And here's what my mother said to me. She said, I don't remember who you are, but I remember that I love you. Let's be like that. In this situation, our retreat together, and for the rest of our lives. Let's be like that. To the insect on the hand, to the person who's, coughing in your face in the middle of a surge of COVID, whatever the circumstance, whoever the person, whatever the being, doesn't even have to be a human, I don't know who you are, I don't remember who you are, but I do remember that I love you. I'm launching immediately into why we're here, actually, but let's take a quick segue to the yellow prayer book. We'll do a more extended version of our prayers at some point, but let's since I'm already launched, let's do turn to page 1 of the opening prayers. The prayers that we recite like this, they're not formalities. They may seem like formalities, but these are to open the mind and place it in the right direction. It's like Munlam is called prayer path. So it's a path for the mind that we're opening here when we recite these prayers together. So even if the specific words and language and vocabulary aren't familiar to you, I don't know your backgrounds, most of you, take in the meaning as best you can. Just know that it's a mind opening, establishing our intention in being here, motivation, which is everything. If you don't have the correct motivation, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. It won't be very beneficial. It'll be somewhat beneficial if it's a noble, act. But the right beneficent makes it, right motivation or intention makes it vast and profound. So that's what this is for, the opening prayers, to establish us in the intention for the vast and profound. Some of these we recite 3 times. It says at the bottom of the prayer whether it's 3 or 1, okay? All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. And then page 5. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. And then we offer the mandala. There's a specific gesture. You don't have to make that gesture if you don't know it. But we're offering everything beautiful and wonderful and meaningful in the universe to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for the liberation of all. And the last part of this offering prayer reminds us that our natural state, our natural mind, our original innocence is in fact the perfect mandala offering. It is the pure mandala itself. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine, by offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Dakini Ratna Mandala Pratitsa Soha. And page 10, requesting teachings. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both, according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. That's us. Our dispositions and mental capacities both open and close doors for us for receiving the teachings. So that was a plea and an offering at the same time. Normally we do the 37 Bodhisattva practices. Is the word Bodhisattva meaningful and familiar to you all? Is there anybody who doesn't know what that word means? We may not fully know what it means. That's why we're here. But it's familiar, okay? And are you all familiar with the 37 Bodhisattva practices? Anybody not familiar? Oh, good. Then you have a wonderful introduction to the heart teachings of our Lama, Garchen Rinpoche. This was written in the 14th century by a monk, a Tibetan monk named Tonglen. He was very modest, claimed he didn't have scholarship or great deep practice knowledge, and then he wrote this, which is the essence of the entire Buddha Dharma. Just poured it out. So we'll pour it out too. So this is what Garchen Rinpoche, when he gave us this, he was thinking he was going back to Tibet after his first 7 years, I think it was, out of Tibet, and he said, I'm returning to Tibet. I don't know if or when I'll be coming back to America, but if you're looking for me while I'm away, you'll find me hidden behind this book. So please, we're going to recite this quickly. We're not going to linger on it, but imagine the nectar of Dharma essence dropping down through the crown of your head as you recite these words. Okay? And if you don't want to imagine it, it's all right. It will be happening anyway. Namo Lokeshvaraya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, source of all benefit and happiness, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. Since that depends on knowing the practices, I shall explain the way of the Bodhisattvas. Having now gained this great ship of freedom and fortune, so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water. Hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distractions, attention to virtue naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Family and longtime companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of all worldly concerns. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In bad company, the three poisons grow stronger. The activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating decline, and love and compassion are lost. Give up such companions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When one follows a true spiritual friend, faults will dissolve and good qualities will grow like the waxing moon. Consider this friend more dear than your own body. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Who can worldly gods, themselves imprisoned in samsara, protect? Therefore seek refuge in the three jewels, the undeceiving source of refuge. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that all the unbearable suffering of the lower realms is caused by wrongdoing. Therefore never act wrongfully, even at the cost of your life. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, the happiness of the three worlds vanishes in but an instant. Strive for the supreme state of never-changing liberation. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When mothers who've loved you since beginningless time are suffering, what good is your own happiness? Therefore give rise to bodhicitta in order to liberate infinite sentient beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering without exception comes from seeking your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Therefore truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by great desire steals all your wealth or lets others steal it, dedicate to them your body, possessions, and all virtues of the three times. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you haven't done anything wrong, take all their negative deeds upon yourself through the power of compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if others slander you throughout 1 billion worlds, in return speak with a loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone exposes your hidden faults and insults you in front of others, view that person as a teacher and bow with respect. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone you have cared for as dearly as your own child regards you as an enemy, love that person even more as a mother would her ailing child. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone of equal or lower status, driven by pride, treats you with disdain, respectfully place them on your crown as your teacher. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be impoverished, always disparaged, gripped by disease and tormented by spirits, never lose courage, but take on the misdeeds and pains of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be famous and revered by many and are as rich as the wealth god himself, having seen that worldly fortune is without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore, subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that give rise to clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes.
Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across things that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose. So wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight, grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the four formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other five perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the three spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused ideas, you might look like a practitioner but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you are driven by disturbing emotions and talk about another bodhisattva's faults, it is actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who've entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions such as attachment the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained from having made such effort toward enlightenment. Dedicate it to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. And the next part that we'll read is what has been written by Tonglen about how he came to write this book and this booklet, these prayers, this practice, and how we are to think about it. It is the humility with which he thinks about it. In accordance with the words of the holy ones regarding the meaning of the sutras, tantras, and their commentaries, I have written these 37 verses on the ways of a bodhisattva for those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. This composition will not be admired by the learned, because my intellect is poor and my education is limited. However, I have followed the sutras and the words of holy ones, so I believe these ways of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Still, because the vast deeds of bodhisattvas are difficult to grasp by simple-minded beings like myself, I beg the forgiveness of the holy ones for the mass of my errors, such as contradictions and inconsistencies. And then he dedicates all the merit for the benefit of all. By the virtue arising from this, may all beings give rise to relative and ultimate bodhicitta, and thereby become like the protector Chenrezig, who does not abide in the extremes of existence or peace. Just a couple of comments on this text. Page 2. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. That is a banner and benchmark for the entire path. That we want to be able to fully realize the radical truth of the nature of reality and of our mind and of all phenomena. And while recognizing that and in that being liberated, remaining in activities and of mind, body, and speech that will help to liberate others. And then, for those who haven't studied this text yet, the very key verse for us to understand in terms of the origin of suffering and the remedy for that origin and for the suffering that comes from it is verse 11 on page 14. And I also take as personal guidance what Tonglen says in his colophon, page 42, when he talks about his intellect being poor and his education being limited. That's me. And however, I have followed the sutras and the words of holy ones, so I believe these ways of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. That can be the way we live. Don't get hung up on what you don't know, what you haven't had the karma and the opportunity to encounter in terms of learning and study and training. Take the words of the Dharma and apply them as medicine for your mind, and you will be on the path. Deal? I also want to say a very special welcome to those who are gathered with us here whom we're not seeing, but right behind you there's a camera. And that camera reaches out to the entire world, and sometimes people from all over the world are attending our teachings and practice, and sometimes we hear from them afterwards. It feels like a miracle, actually. The relationships that can spring from that can be as close and intimate and robust and warm as the relationships with people we've known before, just like this. Don't remember who you are, but I remember that I love you. So, hi everyone. I'm glad to see some of you again. Although I'm not seeing you physically, I'm very aware that you're there. Welcome. Thank you. So, you have on your desk a copy of the Kuntuzangpo, yes? This is going to be this is one of the most important practices I've encountered in the Dharma. And I met it quite early on. I seriously have no scholarship. I'm really not a scholar in the Dharma. I was once momentarily a scholar elsewhere in a different world, different field, but not in the Dharma. But I'm a practitioner. And that doesn't mean I have great practice accomplishment. It means I just keep on going. And whatever has been beneficial to me, I want to share with others. That's my Dharma path. And at some point, quite early on, I met this text, the prayer of Kuntuzangpo, and I recognized that it held for me teachings that I didn't yet understand in the present moment, but they rang like a bell in my mind. Have you ever met teachings like that? Yeah? And you can't put words to it, it's not definable for you, but you're listening, you're alert, you're something resonates and wakes up a little bit. And
and you go like that, and you're looking for more of that, yes? So that was the way I encountered the prayer of Kuntuzangpo. And I recognized it in two ways because it met needs of mine in two ways. It met the inspirational need and the aspirational need of pointing to the ultimate. And then it met the need to address, right here, right now, the fact that my mind is not ever separate from the ultimate, but is certainly not recognizing it most of the time, and I'm floundering and slogging around in the trenches of my own confusion most of the time. And this prayer is a practice. It's a teaching. It's a commentary on that teaching, and it's at the heart of it, the central verses of it, not a difference in importance, but just in terms of placement, is the way to put the practice into effect for us. It's extremely specific and very direct, and so accessible that I just want us to swallow it whole and taste it as the nectar that it is. So we're going to spend a lot of time this weekend with this. We have 2 days. It's also a miracle. We have 2 days. And I like to, when I gather with friends who are gathering for these little mini retreats that I've been offering over these pandemic years, I like to read aloud the invitation that I've given you that appeared on the website, because something about that interested you or resonated for you, or you wouldn't be in the room. So I want to, and I'm careful, and as I prepare those invitations, I'm careful because I want them to touch you in the way that they touch me. In other words, it's a reaching out to you with the essence of the offering that the retreat is for you and for me as well. So I want to read that invitation aloud to you. Just take it in. Here you are, a momentarily captive audience, captivated by the Dharma. That's us. And this is what I included from the prayer of Kuntuzangpo. For those of you who are not familiar with it, is just excerpts from it. It's not necessarily complete verses. It's excerpts that touched what I wanted us to be coming for. This is what I want us to be coming for this weekend, this that I'm about to read. To all beings, Kuntuzangpo, primordial Buddha, sounds this clarion call. Ho! Everything, appearance and existence, samsara and nirvana, has a single ground, yet 2 paths and 2 fruitions, and magically displays as awareness or unawareness. The ground of all is uncompounded, and the self-arising great expanse beyond expression has neither the name samsara nor nirvana. Realizing just this, you are a Buddha. Not realizing this, you are a being wandering in samsara. I pray that all you beings of the 3 realms may realize the true meaning of the inexpressible ground, free from cause and condition, which is just this self-arising awareness. It is unstained by outer expression and inner thought, affirmation or denial, and is not defiled by the darkness of unmindfulness. Thus, this self-manifesting display is free from defects. This is original innocence, the original and unchanging true nature of all. Our original and unchanging true nature. Our retreat is an open door to meeting, recognizing, and resting in this profound, liberating truth. We gather as many and as one for teachings, practice, communication, and communion, in group and in solitude, in silence and in speech.
there's no schedule, really, for this retreat, although I've had to conform a little bit. We're going to meet 9 to 12 and 2 to 5 both days, unless spontaneously something else happens. But it's announced on YouTube that these are the times, so we'll conform as best we can. But we might, in the middle of such a session, find ourselves going outside, for example. That's just the way it is, isn't it? There's another dimension of our time together that I want to speak to. I don't know how much we'll get into it in terms of substance, but I want to speak to it in terms of intention. I've been doing what's called teaching, which is really sharing Dharma with people for many years, decades. But I mean, that's nothing really. Some have been doing it for millennia. And in that time, I've learned that I always need to teach or give Dharma from the place and in relation to the place where I am raw, where I am maybe in tears, as I may often be this weekend. I'm on an edge, up against something unknown, but deeply compelling and perhaps turning me inside out in some way. That, in other words, that rawness that I know you're familiar with. I can see some heads nodding. This is not an unusual concept for us. Anybody who's been practicing for more than 20 minutes would probably recognize the state known as raw. And right now, the world is in that state. In a tumult and turmoil of change that can't be even described and certainly cannot be charted or predicted, on many levels, in many dimensions. We are not separate from that. And our individual states of mind and emotion and body, including the body, and consciousness, are not just reflections, but also contributors, both to the disruptions that are occurring. I know I'm using language that is so mild compared to what's going on, but disruptions will do for now. But also, we are the ones we've been waiting for. One of our spiritual friends who may be here today on the live stream said that to me at one point after I was talking about, in teachings about this moment called the changing times, when the very fundament of our realities seem to be shifting and turning over. And I had a message from this person that said, this is it. This is what we've been practicing for. In other words, this is why we've been practicing, in order to see what is in the way it is. To see things as they are, rather than to continue narrating our individual stories and repetitively going through the same cycles of confusion and awakening and then falling back down. And this is why we've been practicing to become not only wise in seeing, but profoundly compassionate in living. This is why we've been practicing. Now this moment, in many lifetimes, moments like this could happen in the surroundings, whether intimate domestic surroundings or planetary surroundings as they're happening for our generation now, our generations. This is called, in the Buddha Dharma teachings about this moment, it's called the times of the era of degeneration, where conditions are worsening for life and for human beings, and challenges of pandemic are around. In a prayer from the 18th century, that's mentioned. The word pandemic isn't used, but illnesses never previously seen are said to be abroad at that time. And war covering the face of the earth. Not just the big ones that we hear about and are agonizing over, but the little ones that are going on in places that we very seldom hear about and have a hard time even recognizing on the map. Famine, disease, war, natural catastrophes. I don't need to do an enumeration. You're all living the same world I'm living, so you know exactly what I'm pointing to. In teachings that I received many years ago from my first teacher on the path in this lifetime, the teaching, the prophecy was given about these times, called the changing times, that there would be this kind of great upheaval, and this prophecy is mirrored in prophecies in the Buddha Dharma that we were given a couple of years ago, discussed extensively at that time. And that the cause is in the human consciousness. The condition of the human consciousness is what needs to come correct in order for these upheavals to come through to resolution that is of benefit. This isn't something new to you to hear this. I mean, don't we know this looking around? But when we look around, we're seeing it at a fairly superficial level. We're just seeing appearances, yes? But when we drop to the level of causes, we need to drop to the level of causes in our own minds. Everything out here is a mirror for us to see our own reflections. And that doesn't mean we're the worst of what we see. It means that the seeds of the worst of what we see are present in the mind stream of us also. And a part of the prophecy that was given that I mentioned was that if we can make the necessary changes, we human beings can make the necessary changes soon enough, the process of purification and transformation will go easier for us. It doesn't say it won't happen. It says it will go easier for us. And if we don't make the changes quickly enough, the elements will do it for us. The elements will make the necessary changes for the planet, with or without us. But their calling, we're being called. This was my Native American teacher who spoke in this manner, which was profoundly, you can tell, it's profound for me and its impact even now. Her name was Venerable Dahani Iwahu. And she'd received this from her elders. And the coming to correction might seem to us small in what we have to do. You know, how would that make a difference? There's only one mind. There are many consciousnesses, many fields of experience individually and in smaller collective entities, but there's only one mind. Awareness or awakeness or isness. There are so many different names that are given. The one, you know, all the names are beautiful. But it's not a concept that we operationalize usually. We take it as inspirational. Yes, there's one mind, and maybe at some moment I'll be a real meditator and I'll experience that oneness of mind, and I'll know that that I'm part of that and it's part of me. At the minute level of our actions, of mind and speech and body, at that granular level, we are affecting and affected by the minds of all. It's a drop in the ocean becomes part of the ocean. It's like that for us. Yes? You all know this, right? We know this in our minds. We know it intellectually. These are not new concepts for us. Although it was certainly new to me in 1954 when at age 14 I attended a talk given by a neurophysicist or an astrophysicist, I can't remember. This was back in the 50s. We were in bomb world then, and he was a nuclear physicist. And he said, he was speaking about the world and its connectivity, the fact that we're all in this together and so on. And I'd heard those kind of platitudes before, but I'd never heard what he said next. And now it's common knowledge. Everybody's heard this now, but I'll say it again because we need to hear it again. Whatever happens in one instant, in one place, or with one being, one gesture, affects everything in the universe. And in later years, I actually studied astronomy in college. It was short-lived. But it was all about math. I couldn't understand that. I thought it was going to be about planets and stuff like that. But my professor, I just have to tell you this because it makes me laugh. My professor, who was disdainful that I wanted to write my term paper on the possibilities of life on other planets, later, much later, when the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out, he had a cameo in it and was listed as the scientific advisor to the film, so I thought, yes. I did not waste my undergraduate years. So the very granular level at which we live our lives and have our movements of consciousness and awareness also, and where we have trouble and where we have great joy, that level of granularity is inseparable from that universality of the one mind. So when we hear that prophecy that if we don't make the changes soon enough, it's going to be harder on us, I think we could probably deduce that maybe we haven't made the changes quite soon enough, because it's really tough out there and everywhere. But it's always now. It's always now that we can make the change. Whatever is going on with us that's not in alignment with the true nature. Grace, could you bring your mask up? Thank you. Up above the nose. Yeah. Thank you. Whatever is not in alignment, now is the time. So the message isn't, oh, we didn't do it quick enough, so it's too late. The message is, do it now. Right? This is why we're here this weekend. The now is why we're here. And so it's not some accomplishment of meditative stability for its own sake that I want to offer teachings and practice this weekend, although that's a beautiful thing. And if it happens for you at any moment, even if it's for a split second between the refrigerator and the stove, good. Rest there. The moment that you are in that natural state and you abide there, that also is for all. Very immediately, instantaneously. This is why the practice of Tonglen is so powerful and profound. The practice of Tonglen, where you draw the suffering of others to you and then you return your own happiness and well-being. Garchen Rinpoche, our beloved Buddha Bodhisattva, says just very clearly, there may be controversy about whether that actually helps anybody or not, but it does. That when we generate authentic bodhicitta, when we have great compassion, the suffering of others naturally comes to us. And what it comes to is the bodhicitta, in which it becomes one with bodhicitta. And that naturally then returns. So the mysterious processes of practice are mystery only until we recognize original innocence. And then, well, I guess they're mysterious until we recognize original innocence. And then the mystery continues about how can we be in that state of original innocence and at the same time flub up after we turn around one more time. Well, we just still here. We're still here. This is samsara. Suffering and confusion are one of the marks of the realm of existence. Existence has several characteristics. Suffering is the principal one. We wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be able to be here if we didn't have confusion, and which is also known as suffering. So, isn't that great? I take that as really good news. So, we need to drink a lot of water. Those of you who are not from this area, please hydrate. It's really funny to wear masks, isn't it? Okay. I want to speak about a few things before we do, before we engage with Kuntuzangpo. We are in samsaric existence. This is where we're living at the moment. We are of the true nature. We are of what we could call original innocence. We are not of samsaric existence. It's a momentary placement due to causes that we establish in the mind stream and that will come due when the conditions make that possible, and then expire again when the conditions change and no longer support that karmic result. So here in our lives as human beings, in material existence, we are enthralled by sensory experience. I don't mean enthralled by in the way that one's enthralled by a movie or something. We are enthralled to, which means that we are caught by. It's the way we experience material reality is through the sensorium, all the senses. And so we're conditioned, really, by that to look outward for for cause and for the nature of reality. We're looking at touch, taste, all those are outer experiences. Even though we register them in the body, they seem inner, but they have to do with a material reality that's external to us in the sense that it's not external in experience, but it's external in the sense that we are in the sense that it's a projection. Now, I'm not going to go too far down that pathway right now, but you know what a projection means, that what is experienced internally is projected outwardly as if it's coming to us then from the outward reality. And that's kind of an explanation for how we experience sensory reality. So it's extremely easy for us not to see with the inner perception. We're looking like this. All of this is a reflection of our own mind, but we're not looking this way to see mind itself. We can train ourselves to see very clearly outwardly. There's lots of forms of training for that allow you to really perceive very accurately and very precisely what's around you and what's happening. And we have telescopes, we have eyeglasses and lenses and so on for vision, and we have tactile helpers and so on. But what we have, if we want to see our mind and its actual nature, as well as our consciousness and its antics. So let me just make a definition. By consciousness, I mean the ordinary, regular, day-to-day mind that functions, that chooses, decides, builds, takes down, understands, explains, etc. It's also the executive. It's the CEO of this person. We need a function in our makeup that allows us to cohere as functioning beings in ordinary reality, in conditioned reality. But consciousness is conditioned by everything it sees and experiences and hears and so on. And it also, in turn, is conditioning everything it sees and hears and experiences. So there is this interplay between consciousness and its effects. And we can look at seeds of cause there. We can see seeds of cause in consciousness. We have the ability, and we use it all the time, without perhaps even being conscious of doing it, we have the ability to see our mind directly. If I ask you in this moment, what are you thinking about? What's running through your mind? All you glance within, you'll see, you can tell me. Right? It's not mysterious. In a sense, it's not hidden from you. We use it all the time, that capacity. Does that make sense? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? I'm not getting any strong sense yes, I've got one, yes. Yeah, are you aware that this is something you do all the day long? All day, and even sometimes at night in the dream? But let's stick with the day for the moment. Show me if that's not clear to you. Give me a hand up if you want me to say more or show you something. Okay, it's all familiar. Okay. That faculty, that capacity, and that well-oiled function of your mind, seeing what you're thinking, checking in to see, is it this, is it that? That's at a more subtle level, and then maybe at an even more subtle level, think, can't quite tell what it is for me right now. I need to sense more. So then we go into more of a body awareness too, which is very much related to what I want to talk about. But that capacity, that's the same vision, shall we say, or the same recognizing capacity
that is needed to see your mind's true nature. The same inward attention that sees, oh, I'd like to have baked beans for supper, is the same inward attention that sees my mind of Buddha, same mind. Do I need to say anything more, or can I retire? That's really all you need to know. Except this one thing. This one thing that has several parts. When we see the true nature of mind, we're seeing the true nature of all reality. Everything is of that same nature, open and empty like space, neither center nor circumference, neither ground nor substance. We and every phenomenal appearance and every instant of resting in the true nature, it's that. That is what we're resting in. And that is not only what is seen with that inward attention that sees directly, but that is also the inward attention, which we can call clear awareness. Clear awareness is of that same nature, open and empty like space, neither center nor circumference, neither ground nor substance. Therein lies the non-dual. The seeing, what sees, and what is seen, sawa sawa, same same. Do some of you have the experience, which is greatly to be praised and longed for and cherished, of having a guru, having a teacher for whom you have great love and devotion, and with whom you know that love and devotion is also coming to you from that teacher or with that teacher? Have some of you that experience? So, do some of you who don't have that experience, that guru experience, do you have maybe a deity that you practice with, in whatever tradition you're in? Might it be Jesus? Might it be Tara? Might it be Mother Mary? Might it be Vajrakhilaya? Do some of you have that who don't have a necessarily experience of a guru in this lifetime? Yeah? So, do some of you have, who don't have that either, do some of you have, as I did from childhood on, a longing for what I could only call truth? Yeah? And for some, it would be a longing for God. And I called God also truth when I was very young, and for many years afterwards also. So does everyone then have some experience of that? Let me describe it with gesture, almost this kind of upward yearning love and devotion and confidence and faith and gratitude. I mean, that, and a sense of there being something coming and some relationship. Is that familiar to most of you? Yeah? Okay. Then here's a very simple practice that relates to what I was just talking about the seeing and the seer, sawa, seer, seeing, and seen. This is called the purity of the three spheres. That they are all one in openness, emptiness, naturally self-luminous. So here's the way it was given to me. I stumbled upon a photograph of my root lama, whom I had never met yet, and I only met once in this lifetime. Dujim Rinpoche, some of you probably know the name. In a laundromat, a laundry room in a retreat center that I had been ensconced in for a few days, and I went to do the laundry, and there was this photograph of, and I'd never seen a photograph of him before, and I just was stunned. And some years later, not too long later, I found in a book a picture, another photograph of my root lama, and this simple instruction. It was so simple I couldn't do it. Actually, it's taken years to be able to do it because it was too simple. So it said something like this. Look at the picture, look at the photograph, or think of the Lama or the deity or the quality that represents the peak of devotion and love and accomplishment spiritually. Think of that being, and or look at the picture and experience fully that devotion, that yearning devotion, yearning love that is the quality of devotion that flows like this, and then you very much can be aware of it flowing also to you. Think of that Lama or that Guru, I'll use the word Guru or quality, look at it for just an instant, generating that devotion, just really letting yourself experience that quality, and then immediately look at your own mind. And His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche gives a practice, it's the identical practice received through his tradition, his lineage, and he says that places in your mind stream a cause for enlightenment. So that's a very practical thing to do on a regular basis, would you agree? And then there's a third element to it. So let's do the gazing with devotion and the recognition. So gazing with devotion at the picture in the mind's eye, or the quality, is gazing. And then gazing immediately at your own mind once that quality of devotion and gratitude has flowered. And now ask yourself, what sees this? And the instruction written under the photograph of my root lama, that was where I received the practice, the instruction written under it was, and if you see both, then you are the excellent one. So this is a small, kind of instantaneous kind of practice. No preparation required. see within your own mind, or see outwardly a photograph, or see the image in your own mind. Rest in that devotion and gratitude, that love. And then see your own mind directly. And then see the two together. Ask what sees that. That's just a little nugget for you to take home. Okay? So, does anybody need to take a break at this time, or can we go on for another? Yeah? Okay, we'll go on for a little bit longer. I want to offer a recitation of the Kuntuzangpo prayer. But first I want to say something about self-grasping. You heard us, it's spoken of in the 37 practices. And I want to say what it is, because people have some confusion sometimes about what this word is that we use in the Dharma a lot, self-grasping. In the 37 practices, it says very clearly in that self-grasping is the sole cause of all suffering. And it is taught very clearly, and your experience will teach you the same, that all suffering of any kind has its root in self-grasping, and every suffering of every kind has its root in self-grasping. So any kind of discomfort, any kind of confusion, any of the three poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance, or grasping, repulsion, and confusion, however you want to name the three, their root is in self-grasping. So we have to understand what self-grasping is, and it's important as we do Kuntuzangpo to have this understanding. At an expressive level, it means self-clinging, of course. That as we know, the activities of self-aggrandizement or self-centeredness or simple selfishness and so on. These would be called, in the way I speak of it, these are the expressions of or the signs of self-grasping. But self-grasping itself has a much deeper meaning. It means the original ignorance. It's what is produced by the original ignorance. And since we're talking here from the position of original innocence, we need to understand the original ignorance. Note the word sin does not appear here anywhere, please note. I've never seen the word sin used in the Dharma, which has been refreshing. And I think really all the word sin actually really points to is wrongdoing, or wrong understanding, wrong mind, or wrong action, or wrong speech. So I don't think it's a word that we should be afraid of or judgmental about. There's different language, from every angle. So self-grasping, somebody just stepped out. I want to invite you, if you need to blow your nose or something like that, to remove your mask other than for drinking, to please just step out to do that, so that we're not, using the space to do those expressive nasal and throat events. So self-grasping is the original ignorance, which is explained. It's described beautifully in Kuntuzangpo, but I'm going to do a slightly more conventional way of describing it, and then we'll do Kuntuzangpo. Self-grasping is the grasping to the erroneous notion of an inherently existing self. In ourselves, or in this pair of glasses, or in the mountains outside, it's a clinging, a grasping to, and then the subsequent and necessary elaborations of the thought, which is just a notion, and it's a mistaken one, that anything that we describe as having intrinsic existence,
that exists solidly from its own side, as the Tibetans sometimes put it, from its own side. An existence that is not solid necessarily just in the physical sense, because an idea might also have an existence that we think has like the idea of freedom, for example. We might think that there's a meaning to that has solidity in terms of what it points to, even though it's not an object, right? It's a thought. But self-grasping is grasping to that notion, not just in ourselves. I'm grasping to the notion that I have inherent existence, that I exist as a stable, ongoing, we might even say permanent, or perhaps recurringly permanent thing, entity. I describe it, and it's described in the Dharma as an erroneous conception because it's wrong, it's incorrect. And the experiences of impermanence, I mean, that's one of the first pointers. In the world that we know and inhabit, is not everything impermanent? So how could we say it has a self that is inherently existing? Is that clear? Its implications might not be clear, but that's what self-grasping means. It doesn't mean, oh, I think I'm great. It doesn't mean, oh, I'm selfish. Those things come from that. But the original misconception is exactly that. It's a misperception and a misconception. And we build our worlds on it. So the base is faulty, which gives rise to fear. Because we know, we sense when we're not on solid ground. And because what is true is original innocence, the true nature, which is space-like and spontaneously generative of compassion. Because that is the true nature, and we are never separate from that. You can't be separate from what is true. Right? That's not possible. Because of that, the falsity of the claim of an inherently existing self is like a fault line in the vessel. So if you've ever made a pot, if you've ever been a potter, you know that as you're bringing that pot up, if it starts to waver, it's because there's a fault in the clay body somewhere, and you have to take the pot back down so that you go below where that fault is and clear it. That's what we're doing when we practice. There's a fault in the vessel of our thought and our conceptualization. And all the suffering that we experience and cause, right, to ourselves and others, and all the harm doing that comes from well-meaning beings, comes from that fault. It's just a false conception. And that's why we can speak in such a light way of original innocence, that we don't come in to existence with the intention of harm. We come in that state. I'm talking about the immediate, I'm not talking about at what point consciousness arises. I'm talking about the point at which consciousness arises, there's a separation. And that's what is being spoken of here in terms of causation, and it's what's being spoken of in terms of the methods by which we address the cause in all the ways in which we elaborate it. Is this making sense for you all?
to some degree. Whatever resonates for you, whatever makes some sense, just let that be what you rest with for the moment. There's no need to, we don't need to elaborate beyond what the specific thing is that catches your attention that you can recognize and say, oh yeah, that's where I can relate to what's being said. Okay? So on that basis, let's do a recitation of the prayer of Kuntuzangpo. And the masks need to be on for that, of course. And then after we do this recitation, I'd like to have us take a short break in silence. Just I want this to be able to resonate for you, and just a short break, a bathroom break, and then maybe just be outside for maybe 5 minutes after that, so that you can look around and just experience some resonance, whatever it may be, to these verses. Okay? The prayer of Kuntuzangpo, the primordial Buddha, Samantabhadra. Ho, everything. Oh, you want to recite with me? Yeah. Okay. Ho, everything, appearance and existence, samsara and nirvana, has a single ground, yet two paths and two fruitions, and magically displays as awareness or unawareness. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all beings become Buddhas, completely perfected in the abode of the Dharma Dhatu. The ground of all is uncompounded, and the self-arising great expanse beyond expression has neither the name samsara nor nirvana. Realizing just this, you are a Buddha. Not realizing this, you are a being wandering in samsara. I pray that all you beings of the three realms may realize the true meaning of the inexpressible ground. I, Kuntuzangpo, have realized the truth of this ground, free from cause and condition, which is just this self-arising awareness. It is unstained by outer expression and inner thought, affirmation or denial, and is not defiled by the darkness of unmindfulness. Thus, this self-manifesting display is free from defects. I, Kuntuzangpo, abide as intrinsic awareness. Even though the three realms were to be destroyed, there is no fear. There is no attachment to the five desirable qualities of sense objects. In self-arising consciousness, free of thoughts, there is neither solid form nor the five poisons. In the unceasing clarity of awareness, singular in essence, there yet arises the display of the five wisdoms. From the ripening of these five wisdoms, the five original Buddha families emerge, and through the expanse of their wisdom, the 42 peaceful Buddhas appear. Through the arising power of the five wisdoms, the 60 wrathful Herukas manifest. Thus the ground awareness is never mistaken or wrong. I, Kuntuzangpo, am the original Buddha of all, and through this prayer of mine, may all you beings who wander in the three realms of samsara realize this self-arising awareness, and may your great wisdom spontaneously increase. My emanations will continuously manifest in billions of unimaginable ways, appearing in forms to help you beings who can be trained. Through my compassionate prayer, may all of you beings who wander in the three realms of samsara escape from the 6 life forms. From the beginning, you beings are deluded because you do not recognize the awareness of the ground. Being thus unmindful of what occurs is delusion, the very state of unawareness and the cause of going astray. From this delusive state comes a sudden fainting away, and then a subtle consciousness of wavering fear. From that wavering, there arises a separation of self and the perception of others as enemies. Gradually, the tendency of separation strengthens, and from this the circle of samsara begins. Then the emotions of the five poisons develop. The actions of these emotions are endless.
You beings lack awareness because you are unmindful, and this is the basis of your going astray. Through my prayer, may all you beings recognize your intrinsic awareness. Innate unawareness means unmindfulness and distraction. Imputing unawareness means dualistic thoughts towards self and others. Both kinds of unawareness are the basis for the delusion of all beings. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all you beings wandering in samsara clear away the dark fog of unmindfulness, clear away the clinging thoughts of duality. May you recognize your own intrinsic awareness. Dualistic thoughts create doubt. From subtle attachment to this dualistic turn of mind, dualistic tendencies become stronger and thicker. Food, wealth, clothes, home, and friends, the 5 objects of the senses, and your beloved family, all these things cause torment by creating longing and desire. These are all worldly delusions. The activities of grasping and clinging are endless. When the fruition of attachment ripens, you are born as a hungry ghost, tormented by coveting and desiring, miserable, starving, and thirsty. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all you desirous and lustful beings who have attachments neither reject longing desires nor accept attachment to desires. Let your consciousness relax in its own natural state. Then your awareness will be able to hold its own. May you achieve the wisdom of perfect discernment. When external objects appear, the subtle consciousness of fear will arise. From this fear, the habit of anger becomes stronger and stronger. Finally, hostility comes, causing violence and murder. When the fruition of this anger ripens, you will suffer in hell by boiling and burning. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, you beings of the 6 realms, when strong anger arises for you, neither reject nor accept it. Instead, relax in the natural state and achieve the wisdom of clarity. When your mind becomes full of pride, there will arise thoughts of competition and humiliation. As this pride becomes stronger and stronger, you will experience the suffering of quarrels and abuse. When the fruition of this karma ripens, you will be born in the God realms and experience the suffering of change and falling to lower rebirths. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may you beings who develop pride let your consciousness relax in the natural state. Then your awareness will be able to hold its own. May you achieve the wisdom of equanimity. By increasing the habit of duality, by praising yourself and denigrating others, your competitive mind will lead you to jealousy and fighting, and you will be born in the jealous God realm where there is much killing and injury. From the result of that killing, you will fall into the hell realm. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, when jealousy and competitive thoughts arise, do not grasp them as enemies. Just relax in ease. Then consciousness can hold its own natural state. May you achieve the wisdom of unobstructed action. By being distracted, careless, and unmindful, you beings will become dull, foggy, and forgetful. By being unconscious and lazy, you will increase your ignorance, and the fruition of this ignorance will be to wander helplessly in the animal realm. Through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may you beings who have fallen into the dark pit of ignorance shine the light of mindfulness and thereby achieve wisdom free from thought. All you beings of the 3 realms are actually identical to Buddha, the ground of all. But your misunderstanding of the ground causes you to go astray, so you act without aim. The 6 karmic actions are a delusion, like a dream. I am the primordial Buddha, here to train the 6 kinds of beings. Through all my manifestations, through Kuntuzangpo's prayer, may all you beings without exception attain enlightenment in the state of Dharma Dhatu. Aho! Hereafter, whenever a very powerful yogin, with his or her awareness radiant and free from delusion, recites this very powerful prayer, then all who hear it will achieve enlightenment within 3 lifetimes. During a solar or lunar eclipse, during an earthquake or when the earth rumbles, at the solstices or the new year, you should visualize Kuntuzangpo. And if you pray loudly so all can hear, Then beings of the three realms will be gradually liberated from suffering through the prayer of the yogin and will finally achieve enlightenment. So here's the plan. A break, bio break, and just some contemplation of the hills and the sky, and then come back in with your masks on. Outside, at least 6 feet. It's better even to have more than 6 feet. In the bathrooms, keep your masks on, but if you're standing outside looking out and there's nobody around, by all means pull it down and take some fresh air. And take some water, so we won't be drinking so much while we're in the temple, which would be better. When we come back, I want to do a little bit of explanation of the prayer of Kuntuzangpo, just so it's a little bit more accessible. And the afternoon, we're going to be doing the practice. So that's why I want to get some more understanding in of what the meaning is. Okay? So our practice for the afternoon will be this central portion, which talks about what happens when these afflictions, powerful afflictions, arise. Rest in the natural state. So we need to have some understanding of what the natural state is, right? So that's our work. Okay? So let me go out, and I'll put my mask on, so if we run into each other, it's fine. But thank you so much for being here and being so patient. It's great. Are you speaking to me, Billy?
We will take a 10-minute break.
Are we all here? Oh. Okay. So let's turn to page 1. Do you have two copies of this? The one that I handed out, and then you have one that was printed out on the web. Does that one that you have provided, is that enumerated? Are the verses numbered? No. Okay. Okay, so I want to just give, probably one could speak, not I, because I don't have enough knowledge, but one who had a lot of knowledge could speak about this prayer for a week and not be done. I'm going to touch on some things that are specifically oriented to a base understanding, which we will can come back to again and again in the practice this afternoon. Yes? So I won't be doing an exegesis of the entire prayer, but really to point to essential concepts of essence here. So the single ground that is being referred to here, when we see everything, appearance and existence, samsara and nirvana, has a single ground. That single ground is the uncontrived, unborn, unceasing true nature of our mind and of all reality. It's the ultimate. That's pointing directly to the ultimate. So the ground of all phenomena, it says of all existence and appearances, the ground of all phenomena and essence is the same. So the ground of our being and the ground of our existence are the same. It's the same ground. Just hold that in your mind. I like to say I hold that in my mind like a luminous marble, with self-luminous and sort of rolls around as I think about it. I don't have to draw a conclusion. And I don't have to think that I completely understand it conceptually, because it cannot be understood conceptually entirely. It's why we speak in the Dharma of pointing out instructions, and why you see sometimes in the tankas and the religious paintings, you'll see a Buddha or Bodhisattva pointing like this. We're not supposed to go like this and follow this. We're supposed to go where it points. So we're pointing out what is the true nature. We cannot satisfactorily describe it. It's beyond concept. It cannot be explained or understood through concept. So we have to point through the appearance that may arise in our mind, through our associations and so on, to that which is beyond all of that. So that's the ground. Uncompounded meaning it's not made up of other things. Uncreated means unborn. Always already there. Always already present is the original state, the original innocence, the original and unchanging true nature of reality, which is the true nature of our mind and the true nature of us as well. Unborn and undying, uncompounded, not coming and going, never changing. Like the sky, one of the analogies is used when a bird flies across the sky. As you're looking, there's a certain frame that you're able to see, and the bird flies across. The space is unchanged by that phenomenon. And so is the bird's true nature. All of the conventional reality in which we dwell, the realm of material existence, is compounded. Everything is made up of other things. So in the biblical phrase, all that comes together will come apart, fall apart. It's the same thing. That's what we're talking about. Everything that's compounded is going to uncompound at some point. Everything that's gathered will disperse. Everything that's born will die. but not our true nature. Not our true nature. Not the true nature of reality. We and all phenomenal reality arise and disappear like magic. That's why the word magical is sometimes used. In conventional reality, relative reality, all appearances have cause. Actually, the realm of samsara is ruled by karma. It's the operating principle of samsara, and we can talk more about that tomorrow if we want to. But the coming and going applies only to conventional reality, not to ultimate reality. We don't come and go in and from the ultimate. Now listen closely to this. This is really important for how we live our lives. We don't come and go from our inseparability from the true nature of reality, from the ultimate. We don't partake of it and then step back from it. We don't taste it and then lose it. We don't see it and then somehow we don't see it anymore because it's gone from us, or we no longer have that relationship. We are that. When you see directly, I mean, I'm looking out the window here, it's very huge, this limitless space. So is there this limitless space right here in the circle I just drew with my finger on the cloth. This making of a circle gesture changes nothing. It's still, the whole universe is still open, empty. Empty meaning void in its nature. But that's the same thing as saying pregnant. Although I have to say I've never read that in Dharma. But when we speak of emptiness, we're talking about infinite potential. Yeah? When cause is, one of the aspects of emptiness, as it's used in the Dharma, is it has dynamic energy. It is dynamic energy. It hasn't anything solid. It is self-luminous, unchanging, and has a tendency to manifest through dynamic. The dynamic display is sometimes how it's called. And that's where we come in our relationship to manifestation. When cause is placed, it's because we place it. So all these teachings about the vast, unimpeded nature of reality are also teachings about ultimate ethics. Because it's open, indefinable, and also dynamic in its potentials. If we place cause in our mind stream, there will be a tendency to manifest. That's one of the ways we have, we could say intersection, but there's nothing intersecting, it's relationship. So people sometimes when they think about, oh, well, it's open and undifferentiated, and vast, empty, luminous display, so it doesn't matter what I do, because it's all self-luminous, it's empty, it's unchanging, nothing affects it. So I can do anything. Well, not exactly. I mean, you can, but it will affect you greatly. So you'll note in these verses the phrase self-arising awareness. Yeah? That's awareness that is not, it doesn't spring forth from any interaction or cause or influence or condition,
or circumstance, self-arising awareness, true nature of reality and of our mind, our being, is uncaused. It's uncaused, unlike karmic effects, which are caused by conditioned mind. The reality in which they arise for a moment and then dissolve, that reality is uncaused, always already present. Remember that phrase, always already. That's a key to remembering that that which we don't even recognize existing is what was here before we even thought of it. It's what is here, all penetrating and all pervading. There's nothing that is not that. These are keys for practice. Because part of our practice is to be able to live in the world without chewing ourselves to pieces because we made terrible mistakes, or without foundering in regret, or without getting caught in the emotions that then lead us to habituate patterns that become very self-defeating or destructive for ourselves and others. So remembering that there is an original ground of our being that can be recognized at any moment, and in which one can relax at any moment. Just remembering that that is the case, that that's true, is extremely stabilizing. Extremely stabilizing. Because characteristic of our minds and emotions is this: back and forth, up and down, in and out, yes? So to be able to say, there's a ground. I heard a rumor that there's a ground, unchanging and unmoving, and that is not separate from my own ground nature. I am also that. I remember something I think I heard, That's stabilizing. And we can use any stabilization we can get in truth. We tend to stabilize by stuff that's really temporary. But words of truth can resonate in our minds like a bell, ringing when needed, and then reminding. These verses can do that. Reciting this often enough, and the 37 practices often enough, you'll find the phrases arising when you need them. When you need them, they'll be there. Okay. I'm not going to, at the moment, speak of the 5 wisdoms. I will speak of it more later this afternoon, I think. But I want to call your attention to page 4. And then count down 1, 2, 3, 4. Count down 4 verses on page 4, and the verse that I want to look at is, "From the beginning you beings are deluded." Are you there with me? Yeah. Let me just say a kind of facetious word about deluded, first of all. In conventional speech, in our ordinary lives, if somebody says we're deluded, we're offended, right? It's as if we've been terribly insulted. In the Dharma, when your teacher points out something and says this is based on delusion, you're acting like a deluded person, you're deluded, take that as a real gift, because that means that you're not acting on the ground, you're acting in some other way. Your behavior is not arising from the true ground of being that you actually are. It's arising from some confusion, some mistaken perception in your mind. That's really good news,
because that you can do something about. Yeah? So, Kuntuzangpo, from the beginning, you beings are deluded, and here's the key here. Because you do not recognize the awareness of the ground. There are two meanings here that really relate to our practice, but relate to all your practice in the Dharma. One is the state, you could say that this means you don't recognize the ground, because you're looking at things as material in terms of material reality. You don't recognize the ground of being. You're not seeing it. You're not seeing it directly, so you don't act on that basis. That's one meaning. But there's a key part of the sentence that says, because you do not recognize the awareness of the ground. The awareness of the ground is in your own mind. It's your own mind's awareness of the ground that your practice will be directed to recognizing. Remember at the beginning, one ground, two paths, awareness and unawareness. Awareness leads to the true, unawareness leads to the false, to further delusion. So the recognition of awareness is what the practice is dedicated to, is directed to rather, I should say. Just remember that, because that's an important part when we get to the practice. You'll see over and over again that bell will ring. It's so hard with you're wearing masks. I look forward to seeing you when you're not wearing masks, because I can't tell. I need you to bob your heads or shake your heads or say yes, no. I don't need you to do that, but I'm laughing at myself because I'm wanting something visible. You're there, though. I see your eyes. And I have to say, did you notice, by the way, that there was a fly here when we were reciting? Or were you... There's almost always a fly in the temple. And in the Zen tradition, I think they say there should be a fly in every temple. No problem. There almost always is a fly. There is often, when reciting, a fly wanting to fly into the mouth. So that's why I brought my hand up, Billy, in case you were curious of why I did. It's because I thought if my hand was up, I could just, delicately keep a little motion going to keep the fly from going all the way in. Because it was actually on my lip, a couple times. And it's not the first time that's happened. So I think it's probably just a Dharma friend, in a different form. And but I don't want to swallow it. That would be really unfortunate. Okay. Okay. Now, the next verse talks about how it is. This is so tender and so powerful. This explanation for how we fall into error that is self-compounding and repetitive. So in the verse we just touched on, it says, you're deluded because you don't recognize the awareness of the ground, and then that unmindfulness is delusion, the very state of unawareness and the cause of going astray. And then here is where we can see the beginning of the hardening of dualistic mind, the mind of duality. From this delusive state comes a sudden fainting away and then a subtle consciousness of wavering fear. Now I want you to just inquire within, as I read these words, to see if you have any recognition of these subtle states. This is very subtle, what's being talked about here. And it didn't just happen once for sentient beings. It happens for every sentient being. It's a spontaneous, what's called co-emergent arising of ignorance. Co-emergent meaning arising with the arising of consciousness is this innate unawareness, which you see further down, in innate unawareness, the term. So these next four verses are about how that happens and about the fact that it does happen. It's natural, it's innocent. This is the innocent error that gives rise to all our confusion and delusion. This is an innocent error of perception and apperception and interpretation. Please, if you remember nothing from this weekend, remember that. It will change the ground that you think you're standing on. And what's being spoken to here is that there is, in the perception, and maybe one can see this with a baby, I don't know, because I haven't had children in this body, but I can experience it when I'm really aware of my own mental state and what's arising and flowing and, coming and going in my mind. I can sometimes see that a very subtle kind of fear reaction when something new presents on the horizon of my experience, right? And I'm materializing this a little bit just to make it graspable. Like a little defensiveness, do you know? Right? That's one of the reasons that the title of my book of a couple of years ago talks about brave, generous, and undefended, because the perception of self is actually just an experience. There's not really much of a perception there yet, but then there's a perception of I and then other. Other is not identified, not defined, just other. And I've certainly, in my experience, have been aware and still find myself sometimes with that, just that little, it's so subtle, if I don't want to see it, I won't. But if I want to see it, it's available to see. That little subtle, it's kind of a pushing away or a pulling back, a kind of and then begins what's called imputing unawareness. That's 2 verses down. But first, there arises a separation of self and the perception of others as enemies. Now that doesn't mean a full-blown conception of this is my enemy and I'm going to war or whatever. It can mean a slight pulling away or a slight pushing away. It can be so subtle that if it weren't being named, you might never see it. But now you'll see it, because now it's being named for you. This has been, for me, this collection of verses here, these 4, have been very critical to me, in not just in terms of my practice, so-called on the cushion, but in terms of the way I'm living my life. This phenomenon here, gradually the tendency of separation strengthens, and that's the original perception of separation, and from this the circle of samsara begins. This then come down to where it says innate unawareness means unmindfulness and distraction. Imputing unawareness means dualistic thoughts towards self and others. Both kinds of unawareness are the basis for the delusion of all beings. So innate unawareness means it's inchoate. It's inchoate. And then imputing unawareness arises with that subtle perception and a subtle pushing away or pulling away. Yeah? And that is the root of what we're calling currently othering. A deep, deep poison in the mind of human beings. And it exists also in other animals. You can see it operating in other animals as well, including insects. These are the ones we can see. There are other realms that we don't see, but we can see that in ourselves. We can see that in other creatures as well. Phobias towards experiences, phobias towards kinds of beings, phobias towards ideas, reactions of rejection, reactions of, contortions to put that thing out of the bounds of the real and acceptable.
Yeah, this is not new news to us that this is happening in our world, but it's very, very vivid right now. Is it not, in your observation and experience? Is it not very vivid? It's always been there. It's not. This is not new. This is not new, but it's very pronounced at the moment. And in times of change and uncertainty, beings tend, not just humans, but we'll speak of humans for the moment, since the focus here is for our human consciousness. We speak of passion, aggression, and ignorance, and most attention is usually given to passion and aggression because they are recognizable as emotional states and mental conceptual states that are afflictive, that grab us and throw us around, basically, yes? Ignorance is a little more subtle. It's the root of them all. This unawareness, this definite unawareness is the root of the others. But in our ordinary human experience, our lived day-to-day experience, often we experience one of the three poisons that we call ignorance more as confusion. And it's often called that too. When we recite what are the three or the five, we sometimes use the word confusion instead of ignorance. And I want you to just sort of check in with yourself as I say what I'm about to say, which is for human beings, also for other animals and insects too, it seems like, from my observations at least, but humans, the state of confusion for a human being is terrifying. Not knowing what is or isn't, not knowing what is true and what is false, not knowing what's going to happen or what's not going to happen, not knowing what you should do or shouldn't do, not knowing who you are or who you aren't. And so there's a state of panic that arises in that. It can be so subtle, and somebody can crack a joke and it'll be gone in an instant. But what's not gone is the panic. What is gone is your recognizing of it. So this is another key for our practice of recognizing our own process, our own productions of mind, our own experiences, because each of these, when unliberated, when not liberated by mind and by practice, proliferates and expands and creates replicas of itself. I guess that's really what proliferates might mean in that context. So the state of confusion, which you might say, oh, she's a little bit confused, that's a kind of casual use of it. But think of it as, I don't know what is. And then our easy judgments about people who are confused by what they're hearing in the news, our easy judgments can relax. And we can have a great deal of compassion for those who grab to, and it may be us, it may be we are the ones that I'm describing, who grab to this or that story or narrative. In fact, we do this over and over again all day long. Because the root confusion is, are we or aren't we? Am I or am I not? And then, what am I or what am I not? And what does that mean? And so when we're shaken there in our sense of what is and what isn't true of us as individuals, and then we project that out onto the world pretty quickly, because we do immediately whatever we can, whatever is needed, whatever is possible to restore the sense of security and stability to our perceptions and our understanding and our actions. So in human beings, that displays very noticeably in your life and in my life and in everyone's life as the constant creation and recreation of identities and the narratives that support them. I know maybe it sounds like I'm making up a fable here, but this is really the way it works in the mind. We are intent and desperate to maintain a sense of continuity in our history of what the world is and who we are. Our stories about what reality is and how we inhabit reality. So we're actually creating and maintaining and elaborating narrative after narrative about self. So I see now in our current era, we talk about identity politics and it's stuff based on that as if it's something new that we've discovered that's happening right now. That's the way the world has been created. That's the way we create and elaborate our lives. And without that, infinite creativity available. But that's for later. First, we have to see that. So I'm wanting to identify these few things right now because I want them to be available to your awareness as we're practicing with the practice as it's given here. It will have a lot of meaning for you when the phrase is given over and over. I'm sure you noticed when we were reciting when one of the emotions is described. And it's like anger becomes hot, and then murderous consequences, and so on. That the practice instruction for each of the 5 poisons, each of the 5 emotional afflictions, it's the same instruction every time. There's a slightly different angle to it, maybe, with each one, but it's the same instruction. Does anybody remember, without looking at the page, what the instruction was?
To recognize the awareness underlying whatever the feeling.
Yeah. Recognize awareness of the ground. Recognize the natural state and your awareness of it. Yeah. So the Dharma always is said, in terms of medicine, it's always said there is no universal medicine in the Dharma. There is a universal medicine in one sense. And you could say, and here I'm just going to take a little leap with you here. In one sense, you could say that the universal medicine is truly to see the ground of the true nature and to be able to maintain that ability to recognize that over and over again, to recognize the awareness of the ground. So that's certainly a universal medicine, in the sense that to see what's true is certainly the right medicine for being caught in what is false, yes? But because we have self-grasping, it isn't quite that simple for us. We come back again and again to grasping to that erroneous notion of a self. So here, here I want to say what is the authentic practice medicine for all of what I'm describing as the ills of the conditioned mind. It's what we call bodhicitta. It's limitless love and compassion. Dr. Rinpoche teaches about this all the time. This is the heart teaching of this tradition, of this lineage, and it's certainly the heart teaching of this great bodhisattva who is completely given to love. And I'm not talking just about loving kindness, which is an expression of love, but I'm talking about that powerful, unstoppable river of love that will take you to the end, take you to where you most long to go, even if you are not yet able to articulate that longing. So I'm talking about love as a spiritual power beyond which there is nothing greater. And the reason this is so is that love, limitless love, is non-dual. The nature of reality is non-dual. There's one. We are that. And love limitless love, absolute love, is of that nature. It is that nature. And it is the key to all practice that seeks to see that nature directly and to realize that nature directly. Rinpoche actually, in this last year, said something that I think many of us were sort of startled by, and I can't let it be. I have to keep coming back to it in my own mind to see if I can understand it more deeply or more subtly. He said he was teaching about meditation, and of course many practitioners long for that stable state of right, and we can laugh at ourselves, right? Because longing for it is important. Grasping for it is deadly to it, right? The longing is the love, as the Sufis say. So longing is good. The grasping, not so much. He said, "You can't." He said it's impossible. Actually, impossible to meditate, to really meditate, unless you have limitless love. Impossible to really meditate unless you have limitless love. That's the bad news if you think that you're never going to have limitless love and therefore you'll never be able to meditate. It's the good news if you say, oh, well then I must recognize limitless love and I must do everything, to expand my capacity to love beyond limits. And I use those terms really carefully. Expand your capacity. You're not separate from limitless love. So only by holding yourself separate in your mind will you remain unable to abide in limitless love. And the other thing that I want to tell you, in case you don't already know it, is that at the very instant that you first recognize the nature of your mind directly, limitless love pours forth. Spontaneously, great compassion floods you. It will change you forever. That doesn't mean you don't have to do the work. It means now you know what the work is for. This is a promise. This is a promise. This isn't something lightly said. It's lightly said because it's luminous, but it's not lightly said in a casual sense. It is true. So relax. Only two things you have to do. Recognize reality as it is, recognize the true nature, and love without limits. So, only two things we have to do. Great, the list is so much shorter than we thought it might be. I'm going to stop speaking for the moment. I would like to hear from you. It might be a little difficult with your masks on, but I have my good hearing aids in. I went to Costco and got really good hearing aids. Finally. It's been quite a while since we've been struggling with my ability to hear in this temple. So I'd like to hear any questions or concerns that are arising. Billy, is there something?
Yeah, I think I'm going to set up a microphone and people
Oh,
can come
super.
right here.
Yeah, but 6 feet. And you'll have to stay masked. Sorry, I know I'll hear you more easily if you're not, but that's great. What, you're looking for a cushion? Uh-huh. Thank you, Billy. That's a really good idea.
To our friends that are online, it may appear that I'm not aware of you because I'm not looking directly in the camera, but I'm aware of you. And I love you, just as I always have when we didn't have other people in the room. It's been quite a revelation during this pandemic to see how the Dharma has been all around the globe, like 24/7. The Dharma centers are putting Dharma out. And so we have these relationships with people in all countries that are just dynamic and vibrant, and it's really the sense of a worldwide Sangha. It's really profound and beautiful. Thank you, Billy. Do we need to wait?
What's that?
Do we need to wait, or are you ready to go? Okay, so please, if you have a question or an observation, please come to the cushion, my friends. Because there'll be a much better chance of my hearing you, and it will also be on the recording, which will be great. Yes, please. And say your name again.
Gail,
Gail.
there's a story about Garchen Rinpoche with the two texts that you are teaching, the 37 practices and Prayer of Kuntuzangpo, something about him in his time in...
Something about what?
He carried them in Tibet. Do you know that story? When he was imprisoned, or maybe when he left? Those were the two texts that he had, and that was it. There was a period in his life.
Well, I don't know a story about it, but I know that from the time he received the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it was his heart teaching that he kept close. And the Prayer of Kuntuzangpo, he's been teaching as long as I've known him. It is, these probably, if you had nothing else, it would be those two texts, the 37 practices and this prayer. Fortunately, we have both. But if you only had to choose one, it would be the one that speaks to you. So I don't have a story, but isn't that great not to have a story?
No
For a moment?
Yeah. And just one comment. When you talked about limitless love, I remembered not that the poetic, I believe it's a title of a song by Bob Dylan, Love Minus Zero, No Limit.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah, one of his very early songs.
How beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Claire.
It's so nice to see you. Thank you for being here and giving these teachings so freely with such a wonderful open heart.
I'm glad you're here.
Me too. Thank you. I can imagine and experience love and with sentience, but have a hard time imagining love when there is no mind or no sentience, and wondering where is love with no mind to hold it? And
I think that's a wonderful question. Thank you very much. Well, you remember me from years ago, how fiery sometimes I have been. The fire is still there. But I remember when I first heard the expression, all sentient beings, and heard it used over and over again. I remember saying to a dear friend, what is it with all this sentientism? Because I thought, how do we know? How do we know what is and what isn't experiencing in whatever way experience might be happening? I don't know. I don't know that, and this is just me speaking, this is not Dharma, you know, there is some difference of opinion in Dharma, or many perspectives maybe in the Dharma about this, or among people whom I know. But the way we think of sentience is consciousness and being able to experience sensation. Yeah, those two, I think. Is that right? Would that be accurate? Roughly? But from the scientific point of view, that's that's an apperception based on our way of experiencing. I think there are whole realms of consciousness which we wouldn't recognize as consciousness, but perhaps those beings who have that kind of consciousness have their way of interpreting and responding and recognizing and experiencing life that is alive in some way, meaningful for them, that we're not equipped at this time to recognize. We're still at the beginning of trying to understand how human beings function in the brain and in the sensorium. You know, we're not very far advanced in that. If we were, I don't think the world would be quite the way it is. You know? So I don't think that we have a corner on the market here of understanding what awareness might mean in the experience of species that are different from us. And I remember Rinpoche saying, when we were talking not long ago, maybe 2 years ago, 3 maybe, when some of these prophecies about the changing times and about the world, life perhaps not continuing, life as we know it, perhaps not continuing on Earth, I remember him saying, well, you know, you can take rebirth on another planet. And I thought, I mean, this is not the way I think usually. These are not ways that my mind has functioned. But I perk up when I hear him say something. His mind is quite inseparable from a much larger domain than mine, right? So, and then at some point he said something like, somebody asked him, I think, well, would that be humans? I mean, would I be able to take rebirth on another planet as a human being? And my memory tells me, and I don't have a clear memory of it, but it's something like this, that he said something like, well, what perhaps a human might be like on that planet. We don't know. We don't know. And did anybody happen to see the images coming through the web, the TS Webb telescope? I mean, talk about we don't know. No, you haven't seen them? Oh, go to NASA, the NASA website, and look at the images, the first images that the Webb telescope gave us. But the we don't knowness is very big out there. Right? So I don't have a problem at all thinking that I don't have the thought that we really know the limits of what sentience or not sentience might mean. I think my experiences with the natural world, and maybe some of you have spent time in nature, in the wilderness, for example. Have you done wilderness work? The communication capacities of plants are extraordinary. And I'm not talking about just the shape of the plant indicating its possible utility for us. I'm talking about back and forth communication, not by words. And I'm dense in that regard. I'm not. I'm dense and unsophisticated and uneducated in that way, because I've been very much cerebral in my life, besides the fiery temper thing. But there's more not known to us than is known to us. And the one final point I would say is that though consciousness might differ in what it's like and how it functions in different species, some kind of awakeness to their own living, can I use that phrase? Awareness is the true nature of all including everything that T.S. Webb is showing us. Awareness, it's all ultimately of the same nature. But we call awareness, but we could call it other things. That's the nature of the cricket. It's the nature of the volcano. It's the nature of the stars. It's the nature of the pebble. It's the nature of you. The nature of me. It's not. That doesn't go anywhere, and that doesn't change dependent upon what era, what planet, what species. Everything arises from that single ground, awareness or unawareness. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm loving that I get to hear from you. Thank you. And remind me of your name.
I'm Anna.
Anna?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you. I've been on the Zoom maybe twice on a Sunday morning, but it's lovely to meet you in person. And
Thank you. I'm really glad you came.
me too. I'm like so shy with the microphone. Okay. So I guess what I'm thinking about with I'm taking in what you're saying about limitless love, and I believe it would solve all of our problems too. But I think what I was reflecting on what my relationship with being able to do that most of the time or not is, and it's definitely not most of the time, and I definitely, part of what you guys were just discussing, I actually feel like it's easier for me with the not sentient beings because I'm not afraid of them, and except for the gross bug ones. And so I was realizing that the times where I'm the least able to be in a place of limitless love is when I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. And then I was feeling really bad because I killed a spider in my room. And then I had a change of heart and realizing oh, we're not supposed to do that while we're here. And I was freaking out in my room last night because there were bugs. And it was just like a metaphor for oh, why am I not afraid of the plants, but I'm afraid of the spider? And really, if you, apply the things that we're discussing, the spider's not really scary. Maybe he could bite me, but I don't know. He's just doing his thing over there. And that is what I think with humans or other people, I'm generally a very kind, loving person. But if someone is threatening or I'm afraid in some way, that's when that kind of stops for me or becomes more challenging. So I just wanted to discuss the idea of fear, because I think that plays in a lot for me, not being able to be in that space all the time.
Fear is based on a perception of otherness, right? And then we impute to that. I mean, we could see otherness and think, oh, that's really other than me. Like if I see, there's some, when you look at pictures of things underneath the sea, they're very weird and unusual, strange things, and it's really other. But I'm not afraid because I'm not down there. But I might be afraid if I were down there under the sea with these creatures. But we impute to the experience that we're having that there is an other. We impute to that other our thoughts and fears that have to do with a sense of ourselves being somehow threatened by there being an other. And it doesn't have to be sentient. It could be a cliff. For me, it's a cliff. Yeah. That imputation is a function of our mind arising from the perception of self and the grasping to that perception of self. And I'm sure you've read many, many times, or heard in song, or had in, teachings, a comment like, when you truly love, you'll experience yourselves as one. Often about romantic love, yeah? So I'll tell you something that happened with Gachan Rinpoche that helps me understand the actual meaning of that. In terms of our spiritual path and intention. So I was sitting in front of my little practice place this many, many years ago, and I was all alone. I live alone, so I'm usually alone. And I was momentarily overwhelmed by how caught I was in my own self, and my own ego stuff, my own stuff that had to do with my interests, my concerns, and so on. And I was really quite overwhelmed by it. I was weeping, thinking, how am I ever going to get out of this, And I said out loud, I was in Prescott, where I was living at the time. Rinpoche was, I don't know where on the globe Rinpoche was at that time, actually. And I said out loud to him, Rinpoche, how will I ever dissolve this egregious ego? Instantly came back in his voice, your ego will dissolve in your love for others. Dissolve meaning no longer. Not the ego we need in order to get the plane ticket on time. Not that ego, the organizing one, but the ego that is the self-grasping ego. And so I want to elaborate slightly on when I said there are two things we need to do. We need to see reality as it is, recognize reality as it is, and we need to love without limit. That doesn't mean just love humans. It doesn't mean just love sentient beings. It doesn't mean just love what we like. It doesn't mean just love what we're afraid of. It means everything and every being and everything. And here's where it goes further, Gail. Anna. Every situation, every circumstance, every harm, every cause of harm, everything known and unknown, whatever comes into consciousness, comes into that field of love. That's when we become aware of ourselves being cleared out of the way, our self-grasping being cleared out of the way by our aspiration to love beyond limit and our intention to do so. The aspiration goes up here, the intention is how we put it into practice, yes? And as the self is being cleared out of the way by the power of love, the way is being cleared for others as well as for us.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So if you, okay, hold on. Is it kind of just the idea of non-attachment that you're employing when someone, when there is a harmful or you're adverse to something, to be able to be loving in that moment? Is it just a non-attachment what's the, how do you do that?
We're going to go this afternoon to the radical practice.
Okay.
But there's lots of antidotal practices as well. And non-attachment is one of them, but it's very difficult. Love is easier. Love is a lot easier than non-attachment. Because non-attachment's like this little spidery thing in our mind, Love is this river, sweep it right away.
Thank you.
I'd say have confidence in love. Have confidence.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You never were separate from it to begin with. You arise from that because love is the nature of reality.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. We have time for at least one more. I love your questions. It's really good for all of us to hear these questions. And if you don't like the answer or if it's not meaningful to you, just keep hearing the question in your mind. That'll bear fruit for you. Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Lovely being with you. I said, lovely being with you.
Lovely being with
you.
Thank you.
And
I'm
everyone,
glad you're
actually.
here.
But something I think about a lot, which I just heard you comment on, is the when you said you're never separate from love. And this is non-duality, and this is the principle.
This is what?
This is non-duality, and this is the principle around which I practice life.
Around which?
Around which I practice life, living, spiritual practice, mundane, everything. This is why I come to a place like this, because the principles of the Dharma are non-duality. But I'm always personally contemplating the ultimate and the relative, because if I'm being honest with myself, I know that I live in the relative. I don't see everything as non-dual. But I find it very empowering personally to operate even from the intuition of the non-dual. And I don't really have a question about it other than, do you have anything to say about that?
You bet. I'll say my favorite thing.
Okay, cool.
We ourselves are the union of ultimate and relative. So is this. So is this. Talk about being comforted. We are the union inseparably. We are in the relative, material existence. We're in the relative, but we're of the ultimate. The essence, the nature, is the ultimate, open, like sky, like space, open, and like what the Webb telescope is showing us, space filled with dynamic potential, things coming and going, and extraordinary. We're not other than the ultimate. We express in the relative. And as we practice, what I experience, this is just, I'm just like everybody in the room. I'm just a practitioner. I'm a student of the Dharma. And so I can say just for myself that remembering that I am here in my confused, suffering, problem-causing existence as this person, and not separate from the true nature of all. That is, for me, a pathway that opens directly into loving. And I don't mean love in some abstract way, but actually loving all beings and circumstances and conditions and effects. Because all phenomena are both relatively appearing and absolutely being. Yes? So all appearances are a union of relative and absolute. There's nothing that's not that. So it gives another point of access to Claire's question, What do we think we're doing by leaving out something in our understanding of what is and is not somehow holy? Holy. I remember an experience I had so many years ago. I can't even tell you when it was. It was I knew nothing about the spiritual path. As a child, all I wanted was truth, but nobody ever told me what to do about that, and in a way that made sense to me. So I didn't have any way to do anything about it. I just foundered on, and oh gosh, now I can't remember what the story was that I was going to tell you. Wait a minute, I have a traumatic brain injury. Sometimes it interrupts the flow. Wait a second. If it comes back, I'll let you know. Sometimes it just goes. Thank you. You gave me the chance to say what I like to say more than anything else.
Thank you.
Which is about union. Yeah. And on this last 3 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, Garchen Rinpoche has been teaching on union pretty much nonstop. So you might go back to the YouTube channel and look up what some of his teachings are, if you're interested in hearing some of the way he's giving us over and over again this information about union. Thanks. If somebody had a really short, a good question that I could give a short answer to, we could do it. We have 5 minutes. I don't specialize in short answers unless I'm writing, but you never know. Rosemary.
I had one that was just a follow-up to our conversation yesterday that you said, be sure to ask this.
Oh, okay, what was it?
When we're all present, you were talking about having to take a vow of non-excitement.
Yes, vow of non-excitement. So you were saying I'm really excited by what?
About being here, so
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rosemary was saying she was really excited about coming to the retreat, and I said, remind me sometime to tell you something about taking a vow of non-excitement. So you'll see in the practice this afternoon, as I touched on already, that the instruction is the same with each of the afflictive experiences. Rest in the true nature, basically, rest in the natural state. Excitement jumps us out of that state of abiding in being.
Not relaxing.
It's not, yeah, excitation. If you look at water on a hot plate, that's what it's like when we get excited about something. Right? It's become, in current usage in our country, among some people anyway whom I know, to say, oh, I'm excited about anything, just sort of I'm interested in or I'm looking forward to. And instead, but what it says to me is that person is jumping all around and jumping in and out, of the natural state. And that's not very useful, actually. So my first teacher, my native teacher, Dahani Wahu, said, she invited us at one point to take a vow of non-excitement. Nobody had ever heard such a thing. and she gave us a practice for it. She didn't give us the practice for it right away. That was a couple years later, I think. But anyway, I have it, and I'll give it to you tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Because we're in retreat, we're not going to do dedication prayers formally between sessions, but I want each of you to bear in mind the power and necessity of dedicating the merit of our activity together for the liberation of all. The dedication of merit is almost like a choosing ground between who stays static and who moves up. That's not language I usually use. I don't know where that came from. But when we
do anything that's beneficial for ourselves or others, or for the world, which I don't think of as an other, that generates merit for us. And merit is one of the two necessities for going through that last door into what we call enlightenment. It's not a word that I like, enlightenment, but we can use it for the moment. Merit is love, and then the other one is wisdom. So wisdom is to recognize true nature of reality and to abide there, and love is, as we've been describing, the limitless embrace and knowledge of non-dual, the non-dual, that we all are. So dedicating our merit is our bank of love, and it keeps building and building, but it's very, very easy to lose. So I don't know about you, but I've had many times over the years a wonderful experience in the temple of practice and feeling really suffused with compassion and bodhicitta and aspiration and so on. And then I might step out the door and see that somebody's kicked one of my shoes into a puddle. Guess what happens to my merit? The merit that's dedicated, so that's likened to the merit being like water that's dropped on a hot stone. Psst. Your one drop of merit, psst. But your one drop of merit dropped into the ocean of merit that is being generated by all of us never evaporates, never disappears. It's available to everyone. It becomes everyone's merit. So it looks as if we go through that door individually, but since there's no individual and no door, that's really not an accurate perception. So dedicate the merit. And simple as saying, I dedicate this merit for the benefit, for the liberation of all beings. It's that simple. And then there are beautiful, elaborate prayers, which we'll do at the end of the retreat. And we'll do them also at the end of the day, one version, not the most elaborate. Okay? Enjoy your lunch, because I can't be with you, but I'll be eating the same lunch you're eating in my little cave. Right? So, thank you. I talked an awful lot. I came here intending to say almost nothing. That'll be later. Thank you for your patience and your presence.